the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is very simple. Do not listen to Michelle Obama. You know, many of you know that I absolutely hate feminism. I hate everything about it. I hate the phases. I hate the mission. I hate everything, especially the manipulation that it places women under that takes years to unravel. But let me provide you with a little more context, because I know there's some people out there that's just like, come on, Janelle, you gotta love some of it. But no, I'm gonna give you context as to why I am not a feminist. It's because I love women. I wanna see women win, and I wanna see women successful. And I believe that women play a profound role in society. So it would make sense for me to profess being a feminist according to those standards. But the problem is that feminism is nothing about that. It has nothing to do with any of those things. That's all a facade. And I wish supporting women was truly what it was all about. You know, I heard a teacher named Lisa Bevere say once that she said, I've been hurt by men, but I've been wounded by my sisters. And I totally agree, and I can share in those sentiments. Some of the deepest wounds that I've ever felt in my life have come from my sisters. Not those who were anti-women or claimed to hate women, but from those who claim to love women. Those who praise Black women. Not just all of us. Only those who agree with them. You see, every phase of feminism has caused women to sit with these deep scars, all in the name of liberation. You see, phase one, the women's suffrage movement, wasn't about women liberation. It was about liberating from their husbands, being contrary, not willing to go back to their home after the war ended. The feeling of power and leadership was tasted, and those women were not going to hand it back over, even at the expense of their families. They rejected women of color and poor women and fought for the rights of the wives of the wealthy. And the real reason it passed was to increase the number of white voters during a time that was post-slavery and the assimilation that was taking place between former slaves and the poor white community. In other words, like most political movements, it was about votes. You know, phase two was worse. They took the sins of phase one and addressed them in the phase two was worse. They took the sins of phase one and addressed them in phase two while also piling on more misinformation. Phase two took place during the 1960s to the 1990s, riding this wave of race and class and all that came with it. This led to the introduction of reproductive rights that caused everything but reproduction, along with the start of pushing men out of their homes and their positions of leadership, ultimately uprooting the whole concept of patriarchy. Yep, this was the phase where women finally took the wheel from their husbands and started driving the car. This ushered in phase three with a vengeance. Phase three came in the late 1990s, and this was the phase that caused the most damage in my generation. This was the phase of the strong Black woman, the empowered woman, and all the girl power you can muster up. This was the phase about removing the moral and social constraints off of women. Women felt sexually liberated. They claimed to love men and not to wish to fight with men, all while pushing to occupy women's spaces and conquering male-dominated spaces with an influx of females. Of course, phase three was a natural progression from phase two, because now that women have kicked their men to the curb and they're now occupying their lane, it's only natural that we start to see women become more manly in speech as well as deed. Now, while you're pondering on all of that, let's address the final and most recent phase, phase four. This is the phase of today, the fight for inclusion. This phase is mostly ran by or focused on the LGBTQIA plus community. It's all about ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table, or at least That is what they say. But it feels more like this phase wishes to choose which seat at the table anyone can hold. Rather than just pulling up a chair, nope, you got to go through this phase to ensure that you should be included. Their goal is to fight power structures and to tear down male patriarchy. Only matriarchs allowed. They are the anti-straight men, so much so that I recently heard a brand new Grammy Award winner named Doechii say that her dating red flag is straight men. Now, I'm not sure if she's against all straight men and she's a lesbian, or if she's only dating bisexual men. But just let that marinate for a moment. This phase welcomed the Me Too movement and the cancel culture. It's utterly peculiar how the phase of inclusion has been the most divisive and exclusionary phase of all phases. But I wish I was surprised. But I'm not. If you're wondering how all of this is hurting women, each phase is teaching young women who happen to be in their childbearing years to focus on themselves, to focus on pleasuring themselves, and to reject men. To my over 40 women who are out there listening, can you imagine what type of future is awaiting these ladies? Yep, they're dumping their boyfriends who voted for Trump. They're swearing off heterosexual intercourse, heterosexual dating, marriage, or children, all in protest. Oh, yes, it's called the 4B movement. It originated in Korea. Look it up. And as you can see, I'm fully aware of why I'm not a fan of feminism and why I am detoxing every ounce of it out of my system. And as you were hearing in the last segment, I'm taking some ladies with me. You see, the fact is that we are all affected by this. It's been a part of our lives in different phases for so long. And the hardest thing to do is to maintain this mindset in a marriage. You see, the purpose of marriage is to work out self-centeredness, to sharpen each other, to accomplish God's will together, not individually. And it's hard. It's hard when you are following a doctrine of tribal individualism. And in my opinion, Michelle Obama is one of those figures that's being used today. She's someone who is always mindful of her audience. And I really do believe that she causes more harm than good to women. I believe she wants us to believe that she's a girl's girl, but I see something different. And I honestly believe that if she ever ran for office, her message would be 10 times more dangerous to women than Kamala or Jasmine Crockett combined. I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to break it all down. But first, let me hit you with a few current events. Katy Perry, Gayle King, returned from space after an 11-minute flight on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin's Shepard rocket. She jumped off kissing the ground in joy. The mission included 6 women, marking the first all-female space crew since 1963. Katy Perry described the trip as life-changing, stating, "I couldn't recommend this experience more." Amanda expressed gratitude, viewing the experience as an opportunity to heal from past trauma. I would love to hear how that happened, but okay. Space is something that is extremely fascinating to me. To me, it's one of the most fascinating aspects of life. Personally, I have no desire to go to space, but I am waiting on a telescope that my husband ordered for me, and I'm so excited. I'm waiting on this telescope to arrive so that I can enjoy looking into space, but I don't really want to go. Tell me about you. What do you want to do? Let me know in the comment section if you would like to go to space. Moving on. Where are we on proxy voting? Oh my goodness, let's recap. So Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Republican, has gathered 218 signatures to advance her bill allowing proxy voting for 3 months post-birth. House Speaker Mike Johnson attempted to halt Luna's bill, but was unsuccessful as 9 Republicans joined Democrats to keep it alive. President Trump's endorsement promoted Speaker Johnson to discuss the limitations around proxy voting, as well as the resolution with Luna. Johnson has opposed proxy voting as a whole, calling it unconstitutional, and significant bipartisan support exists for greater accessibility for young mothers in the Capitol. After speaking with Trump, President Trump saw that these issues surrounding proxy voting and has left the decision up to the Speaker. House Republicans, led by Speaker Mike Johnson, reached a tentative deal on proxy voting just for new parents. Representative Brittany Peterson introduced a resolution allowing new parents 12 weeks to vote by proxy, which was supported by some Democrats. But Democrats ultimately rejected the deal between House Speaker Johnson and Anna Paulina to allow proxy voting for new parents, viewing it as it weakening the proposal. The Democrats want to vote proxy at any time, men and women. Luna's compromise arrangement was criticized by Representative Brittany Peterson and Representative Sarah Jacobs for not fully addressing the needs of new parents. Johnson expressed disappointment over the rejection and emphasized concerns about the constitutionality of proxy voting, warning that it could jeopardize the legislative process and voting integrity. So apparently this is still on the table, but guess what? It needs to be off. I do not want to talk about proxy voting at all. I did not vote for a proxy, and I'm not going to accept a proxy as my representative. And I'm so sorry, ladies. I'm so sorry. But just like men, you can have it all, but you can't have it all right now. And telling a man that you can't do your job because you are a mother is basically saying, I can't do my job because I am a woman. Fathers are always having to sacrifice. There are a number of fathers who are currently away from their children due to service. Fathers miss their children's birth, first steps, first word, and etc., particularly when they're serving in our military. And I do not want to hear women complaining about our government because it's uncomfortable. Service is supposed to be a sacrifice. It's not a vacation. And if you want to do the job, you have to be willing to make the sacrifice. After the break, I'm advising women to reject the advice of Michelle Obama as much as I'm asking you to reject proxy voting, because I think she's a problem. We're going to talk about it. All of that and more after the break. You're listening to The Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. Don't leave the table.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is don't listen. Don't listen to Michelle Obama. That's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to explain to you why I think every woman should reject the advice of Michelle Obama, particularly her most recent advice. So what does this have to do with Michelle? The whole feminism thing, I hate feminism, why I don't support feminism. It's because I've followed Michelle's career, and I followed her from the moment she and her beautiful family hit our screens. I was a young woman in college, and I knew nothing about politics, but I knew that I was getting ready to graduate, and I needed to know more about the outside world and what was happening. So I started to follow politics. Michelle was fascinating to me. I felt like she embodied all of the feminism and all what feminism had to offer. She was a strong image of a woman with grace and class, and it appeared to be that she was supporting her husband, not without ensuring we knew that she was supporting him, but she was supporting him. And at the time, nothing out of the ordinary stood out to me until she began to speak on her marriage. It felt like every time I would hear her speak, she acted as if being married to Obama was just this huge sacrifice that was just so difficult. I never heard gratitude for the platform and the goals that he accomplished for the family. It was almost like it was secretly woven throughout or periodically stated, but it wasn't the basis or the foundation of the point that she was making. She always sounded as if she was some victim living in this literal ivory tower with the best linens and food and tea, but for some reason never satisfied. She often reminded us of the bad years she shared with Barack Obama and all the mistakes that was made in her marriage. So when her book came out, Becoming, I said to myself, I need to read this. I had to know what she was becoming or what she was choosing to leave behind. While reading the book, I felt it was well written, but I waited patiently to hear how she would describe her marriage. Besides, up until this point, I had a hunch that something was wrong, and I saw a few media clips or, just things here and there. But I knew I wasn't getting her authentic feelings, and I felt like this was an opportunity for me to really get her authentic feelings. I listened to her discuss her upbringing and her family, and I listened to her discuss her passions and her desires to make a difference, and then she introduced us to her boyfriend. But it wasn't Barack. It's another guy. It's another guy who I believe she deeply loved. But apparently she decided to leave him behind when she went to college. Fast forwarding a bit, in comes Barack into the story. Now I expected this grand entrance professing her love and admiration. Instead, I was met with a little bit of an attitude. I don't know, it just felt like all the negative comments and the digs was mixed in with a few kind words. She talked about the way he dressed and how she wasn't into him at first. But what really stood out to me was how much time she spent discussing the parts of her marriage that hurt in comparison to the parts of her marriage that healed or felt good. It just left me thinking, does Michelle really like Barack? And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but that's truly how I felt after reading her book. Having felt their marriage was on the rocks for years before anyone was ever talking about it, my belief came from a pattern that I noticed. After reading this book, I started to really paying attention to certain things. I started to see more and more pictures of Barack without Michelle. And then what was even more telling is that I saw these pictures with him without his wedding band. Now, it wasn't strange for me to see people in politics not wearing their wedding bands, particularly men. But I typically found that to take place with older men because I do know that there was a time where wedding bands was not a big deal for men, especially when men were working outside more often. So a lot of men didn't wear wedding bands. And typically, if you're older, I noticed that older men don't wear wedding bands, but their wives would. But with younger men and younger marriages, I absolutely saw men wearing their wedding bands. So the fact that I started to see him without it was quite interesting. But what made the scenario even more peculiar is the fact that whenever I would see Barack wearing his ring, It was only when he was with Michelle on some type of official business. It felt like he was trying to keep up a facade. And keeping in mind that this was an observation from a very distant vantage point, but the pattern was there nonetheless. I then heard Michelle say something along the lines of her hating her husband for 10 years.
Being catty by saying this, it's like there were 10 years when I couldn't stand my husband.
You know? Do say that. You say
10 years. And guess when it happened? When those kids were little, right?
What I noticed is that while she was sharing these challenges, she will also address why there was a need to stay in the game. It often felt like she was just staying in the game because she's not a quitter. But then she went on her book tour, and I noticed more distance from Barack, but it felt like she was determined to build a name and to build a career for herself, apart from Obama, while using the platform that they built off of his name. This is when I became certain that there was some trouble in paradise, or at least the snowball had begun to roll. People began to speculate about why Barack Obama was so far away or seemingly not supporting her. And I felt that it was clear that she just didn't want him to be there. So then you fast forward to the 2024 election cycle, where you begin to notice that she was absent at big events and publicly declining opportunities to stand with her husband, who happens to be the president, the former president of the United States. So when she decided not to stand with him during President Trump's inauguration, forcing him to walk out there by himself and get booed by everyone, that was, I think, the straw that broke the media back. Then we started to hear things about the secret relationship between Jennifer Aniston and Barack Obama, which she came out and stated it was not true. But there was the normal silence of the Obamas. But then as the snowball continued to roll and then started to grow and get bigger and bigger, and people really started questioning, finally Barack spoke out.
I was in a deep deficit with my wife, so I have been trying to dig myself out of that hole by doing occasionally fun things.
So you see, Barack stated that he's climbing out of a deficit with his wife. But then that triggered, I guess, Michelle to come in and also help try to clean up these rumors. And this is what she had to say.
I didn't even fathom that I was making a choice for myself, that they had to assume that my husband and I are divorcing. You know, this couldn't be a grown woman just making a set of decisions for herself. Actually, finally, like going, what am I doing? You know, who am I doing this for? And if it doesn't fit into the sort of stereotype of what people think we should do, then it gets labeled as something negative and horrible.
So listen, I'm not here because I want to speculate on whether or not they're married or their marriage is surviving or dead or whatever, because I don't have an idea and I don't really care to know, right? That's their personal business. But I do think that there's something else afoot. Absolutely not because of what they have said or what others have said, but I think something's afoot because of what's not being said, which is we are not getting divorced. In pure Obama style, both have danced around, providing us with a direct response. And that's what gives me pause. Why won't they just say, we're not getting divorced? If I saw a rumor about my marriage picking up steam and I knew it wasn't true, the first thing that I would say is, hey guys, nope, it's not true. I am not leaving Kelvin. That is not true. We are not getting a divorce. That is an absolute lie. We are not getting a divorce. Then I will give everybody a piece of my mind for starting the rumor. But I would debunk it outright first. You know, I learn more from humans based on what they don't do rather than what they show me. In other words, the fact that this response isn't aligned with human nature's response is what gives me pause. I feel like the message that's being conveyed to women today is quite alarming. I feel like it suggests that women should be able to choose to neglect their duties of their home and their families and their careers without facing any type of external consequences, or in this case, any questions. This narrative is worse than what feminism poses because it operates quite subtly. While feminism tends to focus on empowering single women, public figures like Michelle Obama appear to be attracting married women to this feminist cause, particularly those late in life. This is a trend that I'm noticing. You see, she's introducing individualism and selfishness into marriages by encouraging women to dismiss their husband's requests for support and dictating when they will engage with their families. At 61 years old, she's sending a message that embracing this mindset is akin to being a big girl. Yeah, I'll place emphasis on girl because it's giving girl, not woman energy. Michelle has even gone as far to produce a Netflix show called Later Dater, which highlights the dating experiences of singles over 50. This show emphasizes love and companionship, but we must ask ourselves, why is she doing this? Is it because data is showing that there is an increase in women leaving their marriages? The trend is often referred to as gray divorce. You see, the divorce rate among couples ages 50 and older has doubled since the 1990s. And with recent statistics revealing that this increase has gone from, instead of 1 in 1,000 married individuals divorcing, now it's 10 in 1,000 married individuals divorcing late in life. But why are these women leaving? You see, women today are more empowered to prioritize their happiness and their personal fulfillment over reassessing their lives after children move out. And we can thank Michelle for that, because she's certainly sending this message that just because you're married doesn't mean that you can't live your own little private life over there and do what you want to do apart from what your husband would like. And now that we have people living longer, so there's greater longevity, many of these women are realizing that these long-term marriages that they're in seems to not equate to a lasting happiness. Well, duh. Happiness is hard to maintain alone. But it's even harder in a marriage because you have to seek to be one. Therefore, we don't seek happiness in marriage. We seek joy and contentment. I'm also seeing a rise in support networks and social media pages that amplify this trend. It validates these feelings of discontentment and encouraging women to seek independence rather than engaging in their marriages. As they prioritize personal growth through education and career advancement, some women opt for independence, leading to this worrying dissolution of marriages. Whatever the reason, the data is definitely showing that this trend is growing year by year. In 2019, the percentage of divorce among adults age 50 and older was approximately 25% of all divorces in the United States. In 2022, the percentage increased to about 30%. And in 2024, projections suggest that gray divorces could account for around 35% of all divorces. While I believe that the Obama's marriage may not be what it seems, I'm deeply concerned about the narrative that promotes this idea that women can have it all. Independence closely resembling singleness in a marriage. This concept sends a detrimental message to married women. It's not enough to dissolve the hopes of family life. That's what feminism's doing as a whole. Now we got to actively start contributing to the erosion of marriages. This narrative appears to be strategically crafted for the promotion of tribal building. It's Michelle Obama trying to build this tribe of women that's all behind her and support her, or just kind of coalescing all the women together into this tribe of married women, all acting single and independent of their husbands. You see, Michelle and Barack are astutely aware of their audience. Women contemplating or experiencing great divorce are the people who are reading her books and watching her television show. And in the past, Michelle used to encourage women to persevere through challenges in their marriage. But now it seems like she's advocating for selfishness and individuality within the marriage. This is a mindset that almost always universally lead to divorce. And so it makes you feel like maybe misery loves company, like maybe she is going through something and she's just connecting with people, or maybe she's just capitalizing on the moment. But as we move forward, I hope you take away a perspective that encourages the strengthening of marriage. You reject this notion that you can fully merge your life with that of your spouse while also pursuing a life that's completely focused on your personal desires. Because singleness is for those who are single. Marriage is a partnership where every decision should be made as a team. We cannot become comfortable with undermining this foundational concept. It isn't about supporting each other or who supported each other first. It's about mutual support throughout life. You know, a wise person once told me that marriage is like riding a horse. You can't ride it side by side. And that feminism has pushed this idea that you can sit side by side on that horse, thus leaving women to feel like they're barely hanging on. So how do we think about marriage if we're going to ditch this whole idea of feminism because it's just crazy? Well, after the break, I'm going to share a snippet from my podcast series called Detoxing Feminism. In order to reject the harmful advice that's circulating today, it's crucial that we fill that void with sound guidance. So don't leave the table. You're listening to The Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship. And yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. That's right. This is the Janelle King Show. This is Extra 106.3. This is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic, don't you listen to Michelle Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, stop listening to Michelle Obama. Feminism has evolved through several different phases, each phase causing significant harm under the guise of liberation. And now we have Michelle Obama's narrative fueling this dangerous individualism in marriage. distorting the essence of marriage from partnership built on mutual support to one that's centered on personal desires. It's almost like she feels like, I've supported Barack, so now it's my turn. I got to do my own thing, and I guess he got to shut up and let me do it, even if it means him standing alone. And I'm not a fan of Barack Obama, but I am a fan of marriage. And although this narrative is quite subtle, you got to remember, it only takes a little leaven to level an entire. And although this is quite subtle, you have to understand that it only takes a little leaven to leaven the whole loaf. In other words, the small things can cause a huge change. And her narrative's emphasis on self-fulfillment breeds selfishness, jeopardizing marital commitments. And as I am detoxing from feminism, I am aware of the challenges it poses within marriage. The alarming rise of gray divorce, where women are leaving their husbands after decades, has doubled since the 1990s. Women are emboldened now by changing norms and are increasingly prioritizing their own happiness at the expense of their family unit. As these women are reassessing their identities after raising children and moving on in life, I believe that their focus should be on solidifying the family unit instead of abandoning them for personal gain. The impact of promoting such harmful narratives are profound, and it's leading to an increase of family breakdown and eroding traditional values that we cherish. But like all things, you can't get rid of bad practices without replacing it with some good ideas. So I'm going to play a short little clip from my series, Detoxing Feminism. In Detoxing Feminism, we have to replace it with something else. And I suggest replacing it with a proven method that has worked for centuries: biblical femininity. Feminism makes women the center of attention, when biblical femininity places the results of femininity on the center stage, not the woman. In other words, let's start with the first trait. So the first trait of a biblical feminine woman is that she's a helper. Feminism says that it's a word that means less than or slave to. And in fact, it has a lot more responsibility than that. It's a lot of responsibility associated with being a helper, and we are divinely equipped to do it. We have major responsibilities, and I always tell women is that when they say things like, oh, they just want me to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. First of all, not all women can be pregnant, so we understand that that's not true. Next, I don't think being barefoot or whether I wear shoes or not matters to my husband. But then lastly, being in the kitchen. Let's stop making being in the kitchen a negative thing, and let's make being in the kitchen what it really is. You are responsible for what is going to be put inside of your family's overall health. You are responsible for it. It is your responsibility to look at what's happening, what's in these ingredients, how is it affecting us? Am I giving my family the serving size? Am I paying attention to how healthy we are as a family? That's a huge responsibility. We're not just barefoot and pregnant in kitchens. We are out here holding down the fort, and it starts with how we energize our family. So don't ever let anyone tell you that being in the kitchen is something bad. It's actually really, really good. Moving on, the next trait that I really, really want to see women operate in, that is a best part of biblical femininity, that is kind of opposite of feminism, is self-control. So why is it important to have self-control as a woman? Because it's hard. Of course we want to live without restraints. Doesn't feminism teach us to submit to no one but self? That being sexually promiscuous is somehow liberating, and we all know that it's not at all liberating, and it hasn't been. Self-control, in my opinion, is all about creating stability. Because an unstable woman is not beautiful at all. It's actually quite sad. And when you start pausing to think about how you're going to react, planning how you're going to handle difficult or emotional people, You find yourself in a position where now opportunities begin to open up, solutions begin to open up in those moments. When I look at mature women walking in biblical femininity, what I'm impressed by the most is not that they don't get angry, because I know they do, but it's the way they manage their anger. And I truly believe that you can say all that you need to say without losing control. And then that leads to the next trait, because in doing this, you're going to need this next trait that I believe is also very, very necessary when we're talking about biblical femininity, and it's patience. Patience has been the greatest win, I believe, in my life, because it allows me to take time and it causes me to make fewer mistakes. I'm thinking things through. You're becoming less reactionary overall. Our old friend feminism says that it's pretty much the opposite of patience. It tells us to get up now. It tells us that you can have it all. It tells you to go do it all. It tells you to do it now. It makes you feel like you're always running behind. I would watch these feminist queens and their lives appear to be so put together. Hair, makeup, jewelry, check. Children, family look great, check. Bomb career, check. The problem was that when I would speak with normal women, I noticed that the appearance of having it together was more important than the reality. And then oftentimes, or too often, the woman who didn't have it together, me, would find myself kind of lashing out when it appears to be uncovered. And the fact is that we're not supposed to have it all together. We're supposed to have it all in Christ, because it's He who will hold it together. Release the pressure of having to do it yourself and lean into the helper that has been given to all of us. I can list so many traits that are provided throughout the Bible that outlines how women should embrace this part, this new form of femininity, apart from what feminism teaches. And I really want to close on this part because it's really my heart. Biblical femininity encourages us to live in joy and peace. Joy is something you can possess no matter what you have going on. Unlike happiness, which requires something to be happening, joy is something you can feel in the midst of some of the darkest times in your life. Joy is completely connected to gratitude. And whenever you feel your joy is slipping, immediately resist the negative thoughts and begin to be thankful for what you can be thankful for, even if it's something as simple as the ability to take a breath just for that moment. When you find joy, you will also find peace. And together, they make for a wonderful partnership. When I was struggling and trying to find happiness, which is so hard to maintain, yet feminism tells me that doing all these things and that doing all her things will lead to happiness, which is another proven lie. Women are deeply submitted to feminism, and these women are some of the most unhappy, the most anger-filled, lacking self-control women you will ever meet. They're carrying hurt and pain, embracing trauma rather than overcoming it, all the sadness and emotionalism all the time. Nothing exciting or desiring about any of them. But when I meet women who are full of joy, I don't see their pain on their face. Doesn't mean that there isn't. It's just not leading the way. They have knowledge and understanding leading the way to joy. And you can see it. They care about themselves, but they also care a lot about how you're doing, because they understand that how they're doing is connected to God. And they also understand they have a plan to address hard times with the wisdom of God. Ladies, if we can master walking in these traits, we are successfully detoxing feminism. I hope you enjoyed the clip. To listen to the full episode and explore the entire series, visit my YouTube page or click the link in the description below or on the screen. Until next time, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth.